All right, let's dive in. Today, we are getting into the really fascinating and sometimes just plain weird world of human behavior. We are going to pull back the curtain on some of the hidden patterns in our brains that explain why we do the things we do.
I mean, you've been there, right? That moment where you do something and just think to yourself, why? Why did I just do that? Well, it turns out our brains are running all these hidden programs in the background, and they have a huge impact on our actions.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First up, we'll look at the common bugs in our thinking. Then we're going to dig into our brain's hardwired impulses. And finally, we'll get to the good stuff, how you can actually use all this to your advantage.
Okay, first up, let's talk about the sneaky ways our minds can lead us astray. You know, these things called cognitive biases. They're basically shortcuts our brain takes that, well, aren't always right.
Oh man, we have all been there. Picture this. It's a holiday dinner, and now one relative starts going off on some topic, totally convinced they're an expert. Meanwhile, everyone else is just kind of looking at each other, knowing they have absolutely no clue what they're talking about.
And that brings up such a great question, right? It feels totally backwards. But what's wild is that this happens so often, it actually has a name. So what's really going on here psychologically?
And boom, here it is, the Dunning-Kruger Effect. It's this wild cognitive blind spot where someone's lack of skill literally stops them from seeing how unskilled they are. And the key thing to get is they aren't faking it. They genuinely believe they know what they're doing. This isn't just about awkward dinners either. This can have huge consequences at work, in public life, pretty much anywhere expertise is supposed to matter.
Okay, here's another one for you. You're driving, and some guy just cuts you off, weaving through traffic. Your immediate thought? What a jerk. But a few minutes later, you're the one running late, and you do the exact same thing. Suddenly, you've got a perfectly good reason for it, don't you?
Well, that right there is the fundamental attribution error. It's our brain's tendency to explain someone else's behavior by thinking, oh, that's just their personality. But when we do it, we blame the situation. It's a mental double standard that we all apply without even thinking about it. And it's a perfect example of our built-in biases. Here's another classic mind trick for you. It's called the third-person effect. So think about all those ads that follow you around online. It's super easy to see how they got your friend to buy that new gadget, right? But us? Oh no, we think we're way too smart to fall for that stuff, even though we're being influenced by it literally every single day.
And that brings us to something called Solomon's paradox. Isn't it funny how when a friend comes to you with a problem, you can see everything so clearly? You give this amazing, rational advice, but when you're facing that exact same problem, suddenly your own judgment is all clouded with emotion. It's like we're all way better at solving other people's problems than our own.
All right, let's go a little deeper now. We're moving past just biases and looking at the brain's fundamental hardwired programming. Think of these as the default settings that shape our deepest feelings and impulses.
Okay, so this might sound like an exaggeration, but it's totally true from a brain science perspective. You know that sharp gut punch feeling you get when you're rejected? It's not just in your head. It's a very real, almost physical sensation.
And here's why that is. Neuroscientists have actually found that social pain, like being left out or turned down, it lights up the exact same parts of the brain as physical pain. This is an old evolutionary thing from back when getting kicked out of the tribe was pretty much a death sentence.
So, have you ever just picked up your phone for a quick 2-minute check on social media, and then suddenly 45 minutes have vanished? Yeah, me too. Why is it so incredibly hard to stop scrolling? Well, the answer comes down to a really powerful chemical.
What you're experiencing is the brain's dopamine-seeking reward loop. It goes like this. You see something new, a photo, a headline, and your brain gives you a little hit of dopamine. But here's the tricky part. Dopamine isn't really about feeling good, it's about wanting more. So that tiny hit makes you crave another one, which makes you scroll and scroll and scroll, chasing that next little reward in a cycle that is really, really hard to break.
You ever notice how older people in your family always seem to tell stories from when they were in their late teens or 20s? Well, there's a name for that, the Reminiscence Bump. That whole period from about age 10 to 30 is just jam-packed with intense identity-forming firsts. First love, first job, graduation. Our brain flags these memories as super important, so they stay vivid and easy to recall for the rest of our lives.
This one is pretty fascinating. Research has found a link between people with more hostile personalities and their choice of dog. They're more likely to own breeds we think of as aggressive. Now, there are a few ideas why. It could be that our pets are sort of an extension of our own personality. Or it could be about the situation. Maybe people who are under a lot of stress or feel like they need protection are just drawn to a dog that makes them feel safer.
Okay, so we've seen how our brains can trick us and how they're wired from the factory, so to speak. So now for the fun part. Let's talk about how we can actually use all this information to our advantage and maybe even unlock some surprising mental superpowers.
You want a really cool brain hack? Try this. Studies have shown that when you make a decision in a foreign language, you actually tend to be more rational. Seriously. Using a language that isn't your native one forces your brain to slow down. It kind of tamps down all those emotional gut reactions and makes you use the more logical, systematic parts of your brain. So hey, next time you have a big decision to make, try thinking it over in another language. It might just give you the clarity you're looking for.
You know, we're always taught that daydreaming is a bad thing, right? That if your mind wanders, you're being lazy or not paying attention. But what if that's just completely wrong?
Turns out, letting your mind wander can actually be a sign of a really efficient brain. In fact, people who daydream a lot often score higher on tests for intelligence and creativity. The idea is that their brains are so powerful they can handle the task at hand with brain power to spare, leaving the rest to think, plan, and create. So maybe instead of fighting it, it's worth seeing where your mind goes.
And for our last fact, we've got one that's not just good for your soul, it's actually good for your body too. The simple act of giving back has some seriously profound and measurable benefits.
See, volunteering your time or your energy isn't just about charity. Psychologically, it's a huge boost for happiness. It helps us manage stress better and it makes us feel less lonely. And get this, studies even show that people who volunteer on the regular actually tend to live longer, healthier lives. How cool is that?
And that just about wraps it up. We've looked at our mental blind spots, our brain's default settings, and even some hidden strengths. So the question I want to leave you with is pretty simple. Now that you know a little bit more about the rules of your own mind, how are you going to play the game differently?